If you've been feeling like no matter how hard you try, you still don't quite fit anywhere, this message is for you. Not because you're broken, not because you're doing life wrong, but because you were never meant to live inside a box that keeps shrinking every time you grow. Some of you have been quieting your truth, softening your edges, editing your soul just to be easier to accept. And it's exhausting, I know. So take a breath with me right here, and if this resonates, comment one sentence below, "I choose to be myself." Because what you're about to hear isn't motivation, it's a wake-up call. And once you hear the true truth behind why you've never fit and you'll never try to again, you know what I keep noticing about you? And I mean you. Not the version of you people see on the outside, but the one who's listening right now. You've always felt slightly out of place. Even in rooms where you technically belonged. Even around people who loved you. It's like everyone else got a manual for how life is supposed to work. And you were handed a completely different blueprint. You don't think in straight lines. Your mind moves sideways, forward, backward, sometimes all at once. You feel things before you can explain them. You notice patterns other people miss. Energy, timing, subtle shifts in the room. And when you try to explain yourself, words don't always land the way you intend. So you learned to simplify, to soften, to translate yourself into something easier to digest. But every time you do that, something inside you tightens. Because deep down, you know you're not meant to live a life that's neat, or predictable, or easily labeled. You were never designed to be normal. Normal feels too small for you, like wearing clothes that fit once but don't anymore. And here's the part no one ever told you. There is nothing wrong with that discomfort you feel, that restlessness, that quiet sense of, there has to be more than this. That feeling isn't a flaw. It's a signal. It's the part of you that knows you're carrying a frequency that doesn't blend in. It stands out, even when you try to dim it. You've probably spent years wondering why it seems easier for others to follow the rules, to settle, to accept things the way they are. While you keep questioning, keep sensing there's another way to exist. And sometimes you've asked yourself, why can't I just be like everyone else? Why does it feel so hard to fit? But what if fitting was never the goal? What if the box you've been trying to squeeze yourself into was built for someone else's life? Someone else's nervous system, someone else's way of seeing the world. No matter how much you shrink yourself, that box will never feel right. Not because you're too much, but because you're built differently. Aquarius energy isn't meant to replicate, it's meant to innovate. You're here to question the structures, to feel where the system is outdated, to sense when something no longer serves life. And that's lonely sometimes. I know. Being different isn't always glamorous. It can feel isolating, like you're standing slightly offbeat from the rest of the world. But listen to me. That distance you feel, that space, that's where clarity lives. That's where your truth has room to breathe. And as you stay with me here, as we keep walking this path together, you're going to start seeing why your difference was never meant to disappear. It was meant to lead. Just stay right here. There's more unfolding than you realize, all right? I'm staying right here with you. Same breath, same night air, same quiet frequency. And I want to say this gently, because this part matters. Somewhere along the way, you learned how to make yourself smaller. Not all at once, not dramatically. It happened slowly, almost politely. You noticed what got rewarded, what got praised, what made people nod instead of question you. So you adjusted, just a little. You learned when to hold your tongue, when to simplify your thoughts, when to round off the sharp edges of your truth so it wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. You didn't do this because you were weak. You did it because you're perceptive, because you can read a room, because you care. But over time, that shrinking became automatic. You started believing that respect had a shape, that success followed a script, that belonging required compromise. And maybe no one ever said it out loud, but the message was there. If you want to be taken seriously, be more like this, less like that. So you've not enough to break, just enough to fit. And here's the quiet truth I want you to sit with for a moment. Every time you compressed yourself to be acceptable, your body noticed. That tightness in your chest. That low-level exhaustion you couldn't quite explain. That sense of performing instead of living. That wasn't failure. That was your system saying this isn't sustainable. You weren't built to be easily consumed. You weren't designed to be reduced to something simple. Your mind is expansive. Your spirit moves ahead of its time. You see possibilities where others see limits. Trying to contain that will always feel like holding your breath. And maybe lately you've felt this quiet resistance inside you, like something is pushing back, a refusal to keep editing yourself, a growing discomfort with pretending, a subtle but steady pull towards something more honest. That's not rebellion. That's alignment trying to return. Because here's what no one teaches Aquarius energy. The world doesn't actually need you to shrink. It needs you to stretch the framework, to question what everyone else accepts, to imagine what hasn't existed yet. Your presence challenges outdated systems simply by being authentic. And yes, that can feel lonely, because pioneers rarely feel understood at first. But the truth is, the moment you stop trying to be digestible, something incredible happens. Your nervous system softens, your breath deepens, your energy comes back online, you remember yourself, and as you let that expansion happen, slowly, naturally, without force, you may start to sense it. That subtle shift in the air. That feeling that you're standing exactly where you're supposed to be. Not fitting in, but fitting into yourself. Just stay with that feeling for a second. Let it settle. Because once you stop shrinking, there's something else that begins to emerge. Something familiar. Something powerful. And it's already closer than you think. I want you to notice something about yourself right now. Something you may have spent years trying to explain. Or hide. You're not simple. And you never were. There's a depth to you that doesn't stay in one place. One day you're quiet and reflective. Another day your ideas come in fast, wild, unfiltered. You can sit alone for hours, thinking about the meaning of things. And then suddenly feel the urge to break free. To move. To create. To disrupt what feels stagnant. That doesn't mean you're inconsistent. It means you're layered. You carry softness and sharpness in the same breath. You can be deeply intuitive and still crave logic and clarity. You trust your instincts, but you also want to understand how things work beneath the surface. You're the kind of person who can hold two truths at once, who can dream of freedom while quietly planning something that lasts. That inner tension you've felt your whole life isn't confusion, it's capacity. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that complexity was a problem, that being many things at once was too much for people to follow. So you tried to choose a lane. You tried to present a cleaner version of yourself, something easier to describe, easier to place. And every time you did, you felt that subtle resistance inside, because reducing yourself has never felt natural to you. You weren't designed to be contained by one identity, one role, one label. Your mind moves between worlds, between logic and intuition, between structure and chaos. That's not a flaw. That's a rare configuration. You see connections others overlook. You feel undercurrents before they reach the surface. You can sense when something is outdated, even if you can't immediately explain why. That's why routine can feel suffocating. But chaos doesn't satisfy you either. You want space to breathe and something meaningful to build. And I know that contradiction has made you question yourself, made you wonder why you can't just settle into one version of who you are. But the truth is, you were never meant to. Aquarius energy isn't here to simplify itself for comfort. It's here to expand what's possible. You're meant to live in nuance, in the gray areas, in the spaces where new ideas are born. And when you stop fighting that complexity, something softens inside you. You stop trying to explain yourself so much. You stop apologizing for being multifaceted. You start trusting that all these parts belong, because they do. Your depth is not something to manage, it's something to honor. And as you let that truth settle in, you may feel a quiet relief. Like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. There's no need to compress yourself anymore. No need to choose between who you are and what you want. You're allowed to be all of it. At the same time, just stay with that feeling. Let it stretch through you gently. Because once you accept how expansive you truly are, the way you show up in the world begins to change. Not louder, not harder, just more honest. And that honesty has a way of opening doors you didn't even know were waiting. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told you a long time ago. And I want you to hear it slowly, without rushing past it. You don't owe anyone an explanation that costs you your truth. Somewhere along the way, you learn to make yourself easier to understand, easier to like, easier to be around, not because you wanted to lie, but because you wanted peace. You noticed how people leaned in more when you simplified your thoughts. How conversations stayed smoother when you didn't go too deep, when you didn't ask the uncomfortable questions. So you adjusted your tone, your timing, your honesty. You learned how to translate yourself into something more familiar, and maybe it worked, on the surface. But underneath that calm, there was always a quiet tension. Like holding something heavy in your hands and pretending it weighs nothing. Because every time you edited yourself, you felt it. That small disconnect, that sense of being present but not fully seen. You were never meant to be digestible. Your thoughts don't come in neat sentences. They arrive in waves, in images, in sudden realizations that don't always fit into small talk. Your truth doesn't land softly, it lands honestly. And that has made you question yourself at times. Wonder if you should tone it down. Wonder if being fully you is too much for this world. But listen to me. That friction you feel when you try to be palatable is your inner compass activating. Aquarius energy doesn't exist to comfort outdated ideas. It exists to disrupt them gently, to introduce new ways of thinking, to shake loose what no longer serves growth. When you dilute that energy, you don't just lose your voice, you lose your power. And power isn't about dominance, it's about alignment. The moment you stop reshaping yourself to fit other people's expectations, something shifts. Your breath becomes deeper, your words become steadier, your presence becomes undeniable. Not because you're louder, but because you're no longer divided inside. Some people won't understand you. They never were meant to. Your job was never to be consumed easily. Your job was to exist truthfully. And when you stop trying to be acceptable, you start becoming magnetic. The right people don't need you to explain yourself. They feel you. They recognize the clarity in your complexity, the calm inside your intensity, the wisdom behind your questions. You don't awaken the world by making everyone comfortable. You awaken it by being real, and I know that can feel risky, especially if you've spent years measuring yourself through other people's reactions. But the moment you choose authenticity over approval, you reclaim something sacred, your authority over your own life. That choice doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly. In moments like this, when you decide not to shrink, not to soften the truth, not to disappear for the sake of harmony, just feel into that for a second. That steadiness, that inner yes. Because as you stop trying to be digestible, a different kind of strength begins to surface. One that doesn't push, doesn't prove. It simply stands. And from that place, everything else starts to rearrange itself in ways you couldn't have planned. I want to slow this moment down with you, because this is where many Aquarians get confused and tired. Inside you, there's always been more than one current moving at the same time. One part of you wants open space, wide horizons, no walls, no schedules that feel like cages. You want to wake up and feel your life breathing with you. You want room to follow inspiration when it strikes, to listen to your intuition, to move when something inside says now. And at the very same time, there's another part of you that wants to build something real, something that lasts, something with weight and meaning. You don't just want freedom for the sake of freedom, you want purpose, legacy, a structure strong enough to hold your vision. For a long time, you were told these two things couldn't coexist. You were taught that discipline meant rigidity, control, sacrifice, and that flow meant chaos, irresponsibility, lack of commitment. So you tried to choose. You swung between extremes, periods of intense focus, rules, pressure, trying to become the most polished version of yourself, and then exhaustion, rebellion, wanting to tear it all down and disappear into freedom again. That inner tug of war has cost you energy. It's made you question your consistency, your reliability, even your worth at times. But listen to me carefully. There is no war inside you. There never was. Aquarius energy was never meant to live at the extremes. It lives in synthesis, in innovation, in creating new systems where old ones don't fit. You're not meant to force yourself into someone else's idea of discipline. And you're not meant to abandon structure altogether. What you're here to do is redefine what discipline actually means for you. Discipline doesn't have to be punishment. It can be devotion. Devotion to what matters. Devotion to what feels true. Devotion to the future you're quietly protecting. And flow doesn't have to mean drifting. It can mean trust. Trust in your timing. Trust in your inner guidance. Trust that your creativity knows where it's going. When those two energies meet, something changes. You stop sabotaging yourself, not because you're forcing discipline, but because your actions finally align with your soul. You stop burning out, because you're no longer pushing against your own nature. And here's something important. You don't need to become flawless to deserve success. You don't need to be perfectly optimized, perfectly organized, perfectly calm. You need to be honest. Honest about your rhythms, your capacity, your truth. The moment you stop trying to become a polished version of someone else's ideal and start honoring the way your energy actually moves, your life begins to stabilize in a way that feels natural, not rigid, not chaotic, alive. You may notice it slowly, in the way you make decisions, in the way you commit without resentment, in the way your goals stop feeling heavy. There's a quiet confidence that comes from this balance, a steadiness that doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. And as you sit with that feeling now, as your breath finds its own pace, you might sense it. That subtle knowing that you were never meant to choose between freedom and structure. You were meant to design a way of living where both can finally breathe together. And once that clicks, once it settles into your body, the path ahead begins to reveal itself with a clarity that feels almost familiar. Stay right here with me. Let the noise soften. Let the night hold you for a moment. Because this is something you were never taught how to do. You were taught how to endure, how to push, How to delay yourself. Somewhere early on, you learned that joy was conditional, that it came after effort, after sacrifice, after proving you were worthy of it. So you became good at surviving, good at carrying weight, good at telling yourself just a little longer. You made suffering meaningful. You told yourself it had a purpose, that if you could just get through this phase, then maybe later you would allow yourself to rest. But later kept moving. The finish line kept shifting, and happiness became something you were always almost allowed to have. I want you to hear this without judgment, without pressure. You do not need to hurt more to become who you are meant to be. You do not need to withhold joy to stay devoted to your path. That belief that life must be hard before it can be good is not wisdom. It is conditioning, and it has been quietly draining you. Joy was never meant to sit at the end of the road like a prize. Joy is the energy that carries you forward without breaking you. When you let yourself feel good now, even in small ways, something ancient inside you responds. Your body stops bracing. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts slow down enough for insight to come through. You remember yourself again. And here is a truth most people miss. The universe does not respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you are available for. When you live in constant postponement, life meets you with more waiting, more almosts, more not yet. But when you allow yourself to feel supported now, content now, open now, you send a clear signal. I am ready. I am receptive. I trust this moment. That signal matters. Feeling good does not mean you stop growing. It means you stop punishing yourself while you grow. It means you stop confusing deprivation with discipline. And I know there may be a part of you that feels uneasy hearing this. Because ease feels unfamiliar. Because peace feels undeserved. You might worry that if you relax, you will lose momentum. That if you enjoy this moment, everything will fall apart. But what if the opposite has been true all along? What if the reason things have felt heavy is because you have been carrying them without nourishment? You were never meant to live in permanent tension, always reaching, always withholding, always preparing for a future you never quite arrive in. You are allowed to feel good now, not later, not someday. Now, when you let yourself feel enough in this moment, feel settled in your own skin, you send a message that echoes outward. I am ready to receive more, not because you have earned it, but because you are open to it. Let that land gently. Let it sink into your chest. Because from this place of ease, from this quiet permission, something begins to rearrange itself naturally. And you may start to notice that what you have been seeking has been moving toward you the moment you stopped pushing it away. Stay with me a little longer. This is where things get quiet, not empty, just honest. Even now, as you begin to feel lighter, those old voices may still visit you. They don't come because they're true. They come because they're familiar. The doubt, the second guessing, that subtle little whisper that says, are you sure you're ready for this? Are you sure you deserve ease? Are you sure you won't mess this up? Those thoughts once had a job. They kept you alert. They helped you survive moments when you didn't feel safe being fully yourself. And for that, you can acknowledge them. You can thank them quietly, but they are not meant to drive anymore. What many people don't realize is that the past doesn't repeat itself because it's powerful. It repeats because it's fed. Every time you identify with an old fear, every time you let an outdated belief explain who you are, you give it energy. You give it authority. And Aquarius energy was never meant to live on autopilot. Awakening for you is not about erasing who you were. It's about choosing who you are now without dragging old armor into a new life. You don't need to argue with those thoughts. You don't need to analyze them to exhaustion. You don't need to relive old stories to release them. You simply don't let them steer. There's a quiet strength in noticing a thought and not following it, in feeling an old emotion rise and not letting it define the moment. That's not avoidance. That's mastery. Each day, you're given a choice. Not a dramatic one, a subtle one. Do I move from habit or from intention? Do I let familiarity decide for me, or do I choose from presence? This is how identities shift. Not overnight, but moment by moment. You're not starving your past out of anger. You're starving it out of love. Love for the life you're building. Love for the nervous system you're retraining. Love for the future that requires a clearer signal. And yes, some days the old patterns will feel loud, persistent, almost convincing. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're changing. Growth often feels like repetition until one day it doesn't pull you anymore. You'll notice it when the pause gets longer, when you don't react as quickly, when you hear the old script and feel no urgency to respond. That space is where your freedom lives. You don't need to fight your history. You don't need to rewrite it. You simply stop letting it make decisions. And as you do, something steadier begins to emerge. A version of you that doesn't need fear to stay motivated. That doesn't need shame to stay disciplined. That doesn't need struggle to feel real. You begin to trust yourself differently, not blindly, but deeply. And in that trust, your energy reorganizes, your choices soften, your direction becomes clearer, not because everything is figured out, but because you are no longer being pulled backward by identities that no longer fit. Just notice how it feels to sit here without needing to prove anything, without rehearsing the past, without anticipating the next mistake. This calm isn't emptiness, it's availability. And when you live from this place, what unfolds next meets you with far less resistance than you ever expected. Let's stay right here together, in this quiet space you've created for yourself, because what's happening now is rare and powerful. You may not have a clear template to follow anymore. The old paths don't feel right. The familiar rules don't apply the way they used to. And for a while that may have felt unsettling, like standing in open space without clear signs pointing the way. But this moment you're in is not a mistake, it's an opening. You are standing at a place in life where there are fewer expectations pressing in on you, fewer roles you're required to perform, fewer pure people who can truly define who you are. And while that can feel lonely at times, it also means something else. It means you're free. Free to design your life from the inside out. Free to listen more closely to what feels true in your body. Free to question what success actually means for you now. You were never meant to inherit someone else's blueprint. Your nervous system doesn't respond to borrowed dreams. Your spirit doesn't thrive inside secondhand structures. You're here to imagine differently, to sense what wants to exist before there are words for it. That's why your path has never looked obvious. That's why you've often felt ahead of your time, or slightly out of sync with the world around you. You're not behind. You're early. And when you stop trying to force clarity, when you stop demanding certainty from yourself, something unexpected happens. Your intuition steps forward, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. You begin to notice what drains you and what quietly gives you energy. You start choosing based on resonance instead of obligation. And slowly, a structure forms, not a cage, a container, one that moves with you, one that adapts as you evolve, one that honors both your freedom and your desire to build something meaningful. Or maybe you realize you don't need a box at all, just a direction, a sense of inner alignment. When you live this way, you don't chase validation, you don't wait for permission. Your presence becomes enough, and the world responds. Not immediately, not always gently, but inevitably. Because when someone lives in full alignment with who they are, systems shift around them. Conversations change. Opportunities reorganize. Not because you demand it, but because authenticity carries its own gravity. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain yourself again. Your life becomes the message. And I want you to feel the weight of that for a moment. Not as pressure, as possibility. You were never meant to follow a worn path. You were meant to notice where the ground is still untouched. And step there. Even if no one else is walking with you yet. Especially then. Just breathe into that sense of quiet confidence. That knowing that doesn't need to rush. That trust that doesn't need proof. Because as you continue forward from this place, with less resistance and more honesty, you'll begin to see it. The way things start to meet you halfway. The way life adjusts. The way doors open without force. Not because you finally fit in, but because you finally stopped trying to. Alright, stay with me until the very last breath of this moment. Because here's the part that most people never realize. The moment you stop trying to fit in the moment, you stopped shrinking, editing, postponing yourself, something already shifted. Even if nothing around you looks different yet. That quiet recognition you feel right now, that soft click inside your chest, that's not imagination. That's alignment. You didn't come here tonight to be fixed. You came here to be remembered. To remember that you were never broken, never behind, never meant to follow a path that erased you. You were meant to question, to sense, to see what others overlook. That's Aquarius energy. And when it's honored, it becomes medicine. For you. And for the world around you. If this message reached you, it's because some part of you is ready to stop asking for permission, ready to trust your inner compass again. So before you go, I want to invite you into one simple action. Leave a comment below and write one sentence. Just this: I trust myself. Let it be a signal to your nervous system, to your future, to the version of you that's already waiting ahead. And if this space feels like home to you, if these messages speak a language your soul recognizes, stay connected. Subscribe. Come back. This isn't a one-time conversation. It's a journey. There are more messages coming, more clarity, more reminders, more light for the path you're carving. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove anything tonight. Just know this: you are not here to fit into the world as it is. You are here to help shape what comes next. And the moment you chose to listen, the journey already continued. I'll meet you again soon.